I'm Sarah Martin,
And I'm Katie Martin.
and we decided to examine Catholicism in context of gender development. So, a brief overview of the Catholic religion is that it is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion and is a branch of Christianity. Catholicism is the belief in one God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit, which is called the Holy Trinity. It is the second largest group in the world, which is why we decided to examine it through gender development. The Catholic religion has commandments that define and influence human behavior.
An overall description of Catholic culture is that Catholic culture represents family and faith. Also, there is a strong focus on the nuclear family, which means the mother and the father is joined by matrimony. The father presides as the head of the family in equality with the mother. Children are raised through faith with a focus on love, doctrinal knowledge, and faith. Most Catholic families are seen as larger because of the restriction on the use of birth control. They are also very neighborly and participate in the society in which they live in. Some norms are corporal works of mercy and spiritual works of mercy. Some examples of corporal works of mercy are to feed the hungry, give drinks to the thirsty, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, ransom the captive, bury the dead. And then also examples of spiritual works of mercy are instruct the ignorant by sharing the gospel, help and counsel those who doubt, admonish sinners, patiently bear wrongs and offenses, willingly forgive wrongs, comfort the afflicted, and pray for both the living and the dead.
Gender in Catholic culture and social constructs. For many Catholics, they believe that there are only two genders, male and female. The Catholic Church does not teach that gender is fluid, flexible, or self-chosen. One Catholic website says, "It is a tragic mistake to try to reconfigure the body of those suffering through gender dysphoria through chemical and surgical procedures." In that same article, it states that suicide rates are higher among these groups because of the transition. As we know, this is not true. Suicide rates are higher because of the way people in the LGBTQIA community are treated in society. While not all Catholics hold this belief, it is important to note that many people do, which influences how they raise their children, which impacts their gender development. Gender and development. As mentioned in the previous slide, many children that grow up in Catholic churches grow up with the belief that exploring different genders and sexualities is wrong and sinful. Catholicism also supports the idea of traditional gender roles, where women care for the family and the house, and men take more of an approach and a role in work and economic affairs. These teachings can lead to discriminative and harmful acts against the LGBTQIA+ community, and children growing up may face more depression and anxiety if they feel like they are unable to express their true and authentic self.
Gender and power in the Catholic Church. In many Catholic societies, men are awarded the power, authority, and dominance. Women are given the roles of service, nurturing, and adoration. Non-binary or gender non-conforming people are rarely recognized, and when they are, they oftentimes face judgment and prejudice.
How culture intersects with Catholicism. As a brief overview and reminder, intersectionality is the intersection of multiple identities, which include race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, sexual identity, and ability/disability status. These identities can hold both privilege and oppression due to the interactions. The Catholic religion can intersect with gender and create oppression for that individual. Patriarchal religions, such as Catholicism, can oppress women and gender minorities, such as those who do not identify as anything other than cisgender.
The first article that I looked at was Sexuality Beyond Chastity, Negotiating Gender Intimacy and Sexuality Within Roman Catholic Religious Communities in Poland. This article examines the connections between qualitative research and quantitative research. They studied reflexivity, which is the biases someone has on gender, intimacy, and sexuality within Catholic religious communities in Poland in order to understand how gender, intimacy, and sexuality are presented in the institutionalized framework of religious life. The conclusions of the studies is that the study demonstrates that sexuality is a private aspect of religious communities. Religious men highlight more private aspects, and they are reluctant to share their sexual experience, and this presents challenges in relationships with other brothers. Religious women are more open towards communicating about their sexuality. The gender development that I found is that younger generations of religious men and women are beginning to bring new lifestyles, experiences, and opinions that contradicts the established institutional position of the Catholic Church. The second article that I looked at was Catholic Convent Schools and the History of Irish Girlhood, Curriculum and Continuity. The purpose of the article was to examine evidence of a strong cultural continuity in the ideals of Catholic girlhood across time. The conclusions that I found from the article was the practice of the Catholic faith among the parents of students also suggests a reason for the attachment to a traditional model of female education, valued as much by parents as it was by the teachers. A true Lady of Loretto was very important to women in church as in society. This displays essential marks of character, such as devotion to Mary, who is a model for her ladylike deportment. This shows politeness, courtesy, sociability, friendliness, reliability, and a real attention to study. Catholic female education has been very successful over the years based on its longevity, continuity, and as well as in the transformative potential of its influence in the lives of its pupils. Pupils are people educated in a culture of inclusion, tolerance, and mutual respect. The gender development I found was this article shows that Catholic girls grow up learning how to be a lady, and that affects their gender development as women because Lady of Loretto and other historical women figures in the Catholic Church that embodies traditional gender roles. The third article that I took a look at was What's Religion Got to Do with It? Exploring college students' sexual and reproductive health knowledge and awareness of sexual and reproductive health services in relation to their gender and religiosity. So the purpose of this article was to examine the relationship between religious affiliation and religious service attendance, sexual and reproductive health, so SRH knowledge and awareness of SRH campus services among college students at racially, ethnically, and religiously diverse college campuses. The question that was asked is, did it pose a risk factor for college students with regard to SRH knowledge and awareness of SRH services? The results of this was both men and women were very knowledgeable about male condoms and birth control pills, the most commonly used methods of contraception among teens and young adults. Also, women report overall higher SRH knowledge than men, and also 87% of women compared to 80% of men ages 20 to 24, understood emergency contraceptives more as they are the most common users of emergency contraceptives. And the gender development that I found was students at a university who identify as Catholic have lower knowledge on sexual and reproductive health. So this outlines the need for children growing up in Catholic households to be educated more on sexual and gender health.
The fourth article and the first article that I decided to look at was Religion and the Gender Gap in Entrepreneurship. This study examined religion and the gender gap in entrepreneurship. Catholicism was found to have a negative impact on women entrepreneurs. These findings of the article show that hierarchical religions that hold traditional values, such as Catholicism, facilitate the gender gap. Religious institutes have a large impact on societal norms and behavior. This is why Catholic women have lower rates in entrepreneurship and face more discrimination practices within the workplace and also trying to gain more business-related skills. These results outline the need to look at the root causes of the gender gap in order to understand the inequality and the cultural norms that come from large religious institutions such as Catholicism in countries all over the world. This article once again emphasizes that the Catholic religion facilitates the traditional roles in children that they grow up seeing within their parents and their community. The second article I decided to look at, and the fifth article overall, is Latinx Fathers of Transgender and Gender Diverse People, Journey Towards Acceptance and Role of Culture. This article examined 8 Latinx fathers of transgender and gender diverse individuals. Most of the fathers and families identified as Catholic. 7 main themes were found. The father's fear of safety and desire to protect their child, their difficulties adjusting to their child's identity, their seeking support from other Latinx communities, their growth of understanding, respect, and empathy towards their child and the community, their increased involvement in LGBTQ+ issues, positive transformations the fathers had, and influence of Latinx cultural values. For Latinx fathers and families, religion can present a sense of support, which includes focusing on God's message of love and acceptance, or conflict, for example, focusing on Catholics' traditional anti-LGBTQIA+ values and views. Continuing on the same article, religion in Latinx culture was discussed by fathers when learning how to navigate their relationship with their transgender child in the context that they live in. Many of the fathers mentioned that religious institutions, such as the Catholic churches that they attended, made life more difficult with them because of the rejection and prejudice that they experienced within the church and from people that they were close with. The religious leaders and institutions' rejection facilitated strong emotional reactions from some of the fathers and even led to some of them stop going to church altogether. They instead chose to focus more on God outside of their church and within their own family. This outlines that the church can provide negative and harmful impacts for both the father and the child within the church, which can affect the gender development of those people. The sixth and final article that we examined was Religion Matters, Religion and the Sustainable Development Goals. This article examined religion in the context of individual and community development and how it influences academics, policy, and public beliefs. Catholicism impacts daily life, dress choices, food, and behavior. It also involved numerous rites of passages, such as confirmation and marriages. This creates a strong community environment of shared experiences. Large religious institutions, such as the Catholic Church, have a history of marginalizing women because of their deeply ingrained hierarchical structures that influence social change and public policy. In conclusion, religion comes with problems and potentials that need to be properly understood by government and everyone around, and also recognized for society to function and advance as a whole.
Our overall summary is that fathers of transgender individuals felt that the Catholic Church made life for them and their children more difficult because of judgment placed on the child. Also, Catholicism was found to have a negative impact on women entrepreneurs because of the beliefs of gender roles women grow up with. Catholic girls grow up learning how to be a lady, and that affects their gender development as women because Lady of Loreto and other historical women figures in the Catholic Church embodies traditional gender roles. Students at a university who identify as Catholic have lower knowledge on sexual and reproductive health. This outlines that the need for children growing up in Catholic households to be more educated on sexual and gender health. Large religious institutions such as the Catholic Church have a history of marginalizing women because of their deeply ingrained hierarchical structures which influences social change. Lastly, younger generations of religious men and women are beginning to bring new lifestyles, experiences, and opinions that contradicts the established institutional position of the Catholic Church.
The description of our interactive activity that we want to have in class is an anonymous survey of the class to identify their own personal religious and gender development experiences. Some of the questions that we plan to include are: did you grow up in a religious household? If you grew up in a religious household, how did it have an impact on your gender? And how can HDFS students and professionals support LGBTQIA plus individuals who grew up in a non-supportive church/religious household? We then plan to see if our results that we found in our articles line up with the classes. These are our website references and our article references.